the world. After the Second World War, there were 2.5 billion people on Earth. Today, we are 6.6. In 2050, there will be 9 billion people on Earth. That is the UN's average estimate. The question we have to ask ourselves is, how on earth are we going to live together? Europe. Almost 500 million people are now gathered in what we call the European Union. The task we have to set ourselves is as simple as it is astounding: to create a democracy that crosses more than 27 countries, 22 different languages, and a variety of different traditions, habits and religions. A fantastic experiment. If successful, we will have an even better chance of solving the problems in Europe that cannot be solved nationally. And that is not all. If the experiment is successful, Europe will truly be an example to follow for other regions around the world, and maybe in the long run for the world as a whole. We can show that democracy can expand beyond the narrow frame of the nation-state, from the local and national democracy to the continental and global democracy. Fortunately, during the past 50 years, tremendous progress has been made with regards to the democracy of the EU. We are nearing a bicameral system where the European Parliament and the European Council are equals when it comes to actual legislation. Maybe in 2009 we will see the parties in the European Parliament each name a candidate for the post of President of the European Commission for the first time. That is before the elections for the European Parliament in 2009. That way we as voters can decide. Maybe the European Commission will develop into a government in the EU. Hopefully we will see a more party political EU. The formal democracy of the EU is thus beginning to function. The institutions are falling into place, as is the case in the member states. But there is a but. A lot of citizens still see the EU as far away and feel that they do not have the opportunities to attach themselves and each other to the democracy of the EU. Many people still see the EU as a project for top politicians, business people and lobbyists. Whether this assessment is true or not, the fact remains that turnout for the European Parliament elections is declining. And it is also a fact that almost 9 out of 10 citizens have never or very rarely discussed the EU with fellow citizens from other EU countries. An absolutely unacceptable situation. The question we have to ask ourselves is, how can we work together to strengthen the participatory democracy of the EU? We have no doubt. What we need is to bring us as citizens closer to each other across country borders. No progress will be made if it is only top politicians, business people and lobbyists who have the opportunity to establish political alliances across country borders. In Denmark we have the EU Board, who offers financial support to everybody who wishes to promote information and debate on European matters. The chairman of the EU Board, Claus Larsen Jensen, presents it as:
but it's unbureaucratic, it's fast, it's efficient, and it's leaving a ground for everybody, as individual person, organization, educational institution, newspapers, whoever want to take the stage to do it. The recommendation would be try to develop that kind of democratic culture on European affairs in all countries in Europe.
The good examples already exist. In October 2007, 362 randomly selected citizens from the EU's 27 member states met in the European Parliament for a weekend. Here they discussed a variety of issues of common interest, across 22 different languages. After her participation in Tomorrow's Europe, Karen Holt Madsen, who functions as a woman priest in a small town south of Aarhus in Denmark, said, "The most important thing for me has been the meeting with all these people. I feel that the close kinship with my countrymen has been expanded to include Elena from Romania, Francesco from Italy, Thomas from the Czech Republic, Björn from Sweden, and many, many more. And at the end of September 2007, 100 young people from 18 different countries in Europe met to cooperate in producing a citizens' agenda. 50 of the participants in Waves of Democracy met at Brandbjerg Folk High School in Denmark. The remaining 50 under similar conditions in Rhodes, where they lived together for a week. In October, 10 of the participants met in Brussels to merge the two texts from Brandbjerg and Rhodes respectively into a single document. Thereafter, the joint citizens' agenda was sent out to thousands of actors around Europe. Waves of Democracy was another example of a project where European citizens met, discussed politics and built new friendships. Isabella from Italy and Rocher from the Netherlands believe that Europe can progress if people meet each other face to face.
I think that we need ordinary people now, as people don't know Europe. They don't feel European persons. And maybe if they could have possibility of discussing together or facing off, maybe it's important too, they could create a real Europe.
Because we always discuss things in our own country and we don't have a European political arena yet. So we always look at European issues from the Dutch perspective. And when you go on an exchange, you see the other perspective.
So far, so good. The problem is that projects of this type are all exceptions that prove the rule. They are almost impossible to organize within the current EU programs. They are drops in the ocean, and what we need are waves of democracy. The truth is that we in the EU spend about €2 every day on each cow in the Union. At the same time, through the programs Plan D and Citizens Europe, we spend less than 7 cents a year per citizen on participatory democracy. This will not do. We have to establish a framework where we as citizens will have better opportunities to involve ourselves and each other in Europe's democracy. That is why we have created the campaign Citizens' Key to Europe.
Well, it's often said that we need a European Union that is closer to the citizens. Of course this is true, but the most important issue is that we first and foremost have to create a European Union where we as citizens are closer to each other. I think it's in meeting citizens from other countries that we realize that we have something in common and that friendships and political alliances can cross country borders. And that's why we have to create what I would label as a democratic infrastructure in Europe in order to strengthen the network between citizens. But a democratic infrastructure will not drop from the sky. We have to, in the EU, to invest the necessary funds, maybe as much as €2 per citizen per year. If decision makers in the European Union are ready to establish a democratic infrastructure, then I think that we as citizens will do the rest of the work. We can strengthen Europe's representative democracy by strengthening Europe's participatory democracy. Indeed, this would be a citizen's key to Europe.